All right, so here we are tonight, beyond the court, with, of course, John Ellis, Scotty Mack in the background, making all of this happen, and all of you at home. Thank you for joining us, Elly, with your Dodger hat. I don't appreciate that, but that's okay. My Yankees did lose, and some of our guests tonight are also Yankee fans, but we'll get to that later. And Elly, I just want to say this is going to be your show. And last week was your birthday, and deservedly so. We made sure that people knew about that. And
Great.
I know you really, what a lot of people don't know is that we do a lot of work, during the week as far as putting the show together, whether it's guests or info. And you kind of took control of this right away. So I don't know what totally to expect. I do know who at least two of our guests are, and that makes me super happy. And I just want to say thank you before we even get started.
Yeah, Suds, you turn 46 tomorrow, October 12th, your birthday. We share this birthday month together. Our birthdays are always close, so we're always saying happy birthday over the years. And I appreciate all you guys did last week, you and Vero especially. Putting together the video and reaching out to friends and stuff for it. That was really cool. I'm not too much of a birthday guy for myself, but it's fun to celebrate others. So let's celebrate you tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about you more than you're used to on the show. It's our show, and you're going to have a huge part in tonight's show. But maybe not just asking questions of our two guests, but also answering some questions that I might have and they might have, and just talking. And I encourage the people watching today online to get involved and maybe throw some questions for us out there from our era of the mid 90s through the late 90s or into the early 2000s. And so we'd love to be able to, hopefully it's stuff that we can actually talk about and not over the top, over the line, because there's a lot of that stuff that we really can't talk about. We grew up and we have families now, and there's just stuff, Suds, that we can't bring up that happened when you're on the road. Things happen, and there's a lot of fun memories that we have. But hopefully tonight we can talk about some of the stuff that happened on the court and just growing up together in racquetball. We're going to bring in your best friend, your brother, Jason Mannino, who's been on the show recently a little bit, but he's a main guest tonight. And also my doubles partner and one of your closest friends in racquetball as well, Eric Muller. And obviously Jason and Eric know each other very well, having spent some time working together on the IRT here over the last 10, 15 years. So, what do you think tonight about these two guests? What do they mean to you before we bring them in?
Yeah, I mean, it means everything, Ellie, and I appreciate that because I know you set this up. And we talk about what racquetball means to me and you, and of course Jason and Eric. And there's no more. I talk about constants in life, and Jason Menino, Eric, and yourself. Just most recently have been the most constant things in my life that have really brought me joy and friendships and family, and I appreciate that. I don't have the words to explain what that means to me. I'm here in Florida right now, doing some work, working with some clients and some players, and doing what I love. And all of you, Eric, yourself, Jason, you're such a huge part of that, and all the fans and everybody that's watching and anybody that plays racquetball. Thank you for joining us. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate this, and I'm really excited that Elly, you took the bull by the horns here, and you're kind of just in charge of the show, and bringing Jason and Eric. There's not any two people I can think of that mean more to me in my racquetball career than to have those two guys involved with yourself, of course. Not many people know that, but people always talk about, who are your closest friends or your closest allies. And yeah, we battled and beat each other up, but without the three of you, the career I had on the racquetball court would not have been the same. There's no doubt about it. And our friendship that has continued is so meaningful. And racquetball in general, what it means to me. I mean, the most special person in my life, Veronica, my wife is a racquetball player. And without her, I don't even know if I'd be sitting here right now. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know if I would be talking to you about racquetball without Veronica. So I just want to thank you and Ellie. I know, you and your dad and your family played a big role in that, in her involvement and her growth as a racquetball player. So just don't make me cry. I'm an emotional dude, and I appreciate it. And before we bring them in, and I don't know if you're ready, Ellie, but I know Scott wants to play a quick little advertisement. And
Yeah,
you know,
let's
if you
go
want,
for it. Let's go for that. I might have a question right after that before we bring him in. Just a question I think a lot of people want to hear from. But let's watch the video first.
okay. All right, everybody. So here's the deal. We got an awesome contest going on. Whether you're going to be in Vegas or not, whether you're competing or not, here's a chance to win $1,000. It's pretty simple. Here are the rules. First, download the app. Second, subscribe to the members only exclusive section. Third, pick the 5 winners of these divisions. Get all 5 right, you win $1,000. There will be a tiebreaker just in case. And of course, we wish you luck. This is a good chance for you to win $1,000. Elly, all you.
Yeah, all me. Sounds great. Here we are. We've got our 2 buddies for life, Jason Mannino, Eric Muller. They're with us, and we're gonna get going on this. Before we have our cheers, I want to ask Sudsy one serious question here because you're in Florida right now. Next week you've got Vegas. Where are you? Where's your headspace in terms of preparation for Vegas and being in Florida right now, doing some work there, but having to go next week to Vegas and get it on?
Yeah, so you broke up. What a shocker, because you're in the 209, so your Wi-Fi went in and out. But I do know you asked where in Florida am I? I'm in Vero Beach right now. My partner Shane DeWitt, actually, believe it or not, is positive with COVID, and so instead of being at his house, which I normally would be, I'm in a hotel. And I didn't hear the rest of that, Ellie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just kind of asking, before we get started with all the fun talk, really kind of curious, and I think a lot of players would be out there, where are you in terms of your outdoor feel, your outdoor game? Where's your mentality being a week away from playing some outdoor racquetball in a big tournament for the first time, hanging in Florida on your birthday, a little bit away, away from your family? That's always tough. How are you feeling emotionally, mentally,
Yeah, well,
physically?
so first off, I want to welcome, my best of friends in life, Jason and Eric, for being here. And as far as your question is concerned, Ellie, yeah, I'm nowhere near where I would want to be if I was, about to compete in the U.S. Open or World Championships, because, I don't play outdoors, but physically I'm an absolute animal. I'm a machine. I feel great. I know it's different than the outdoor, when you get outdoors, but I feel really good. And I'm just excited. Honestly, I'm really excited to get out there. And I'm not no smoke and mirrors. I know Jason and Eric are going to pounce on me in a second and be like, "What are you talking about? You're not ready to play outdoors." But physically, I feel good, and I'm excited to be out there. And I love playing in front of people. So hopefully, everybody's watching.
That's awesome. So guys, welcome to the show. We like to start the show off with the toast to our guests for coming on. But today it's not only for you 2 guys, but Sudsy Monchik here. WJK is turning 46 tomorrow. So happy birthday, Suds. We hope you have a great evening tonight, a great day tomorrow, and a great time in Vegas too. So cheers to you, Suds.
Cheers to you guys. But
And to you
thank you
guys.
for being here.
So it's good to see you guys, Jay. It's good to see you again. If it wasn't for the show, we wouldn't be seeing each other as much, probably kind of like the last 4 or 5 years. But thankfully this show is kind of bringing us back into communicating a little bit. And Muller, it's always great to see you. We don't talk enough.
I know.
So here we are.
And can I interrupt because we do
Shocker.
know each other so well? Look at Eric's face. It's like he's got something up his sleeve. I don't even know what's going on there, but he's kind of got this look.
I got nothing. This is great.
Yeah. So guys, there's going to be a little emphasis on Sudsy today and talking a little bit about the man who's turning 46 tomorrow, but also some old times for us all, and then things that are going on in racquetball. Obviously that's the sport that's brought us together. So, let me start with Jay, but same question for both of you. Your first moments of meeting a young Sudsy Monchik, Jay, I'm sure a lot of people who follow racquetball really understand the depth of your friendship, but maybe haven't heard the story of how you guys got connected early on. So why don't you take us back through that?
Yeah, so before I do that, I want to say 2 things. One is that I feel great too. I feel like I'm in great shape. I had to move some boxes around in the garage, and my back is killing me right now. But I got a really good workout. I moved like 5 boxes, mostly filled with air filters. But yeah, I'll be all right after I stretch. Second is, I know the show's about Sudsy, but the only reason I'm here is because I heard Eric was going to be here, and I've been trying to get a hold of him for 2 weeks. He won't return my calls. So
Perfect.
need to have some like one-on-one time with Eric here. So no, all kidding aside, you know, the way Sudsy and I met, I know you know, the way Sudsy and I met was actually my father went and had some college classes with Sudsy's mother, and that's kind of how they met. And obviously the families got brought together, and my father was getting into the racquetball club business with a friend of his who owned some land in Brooklyn and Staten Island. So they kind of had the land, and all they had to do was raise a couple bucks and throw up some walls, and they'd have a club. And that happened. And then, Sudsy and I I think we were 4 or 5 years old at that time when we met. And, the rest is kind of history. We grew up on a racquetball court and, played a lot, for 1,000 years. And that's it. I can't remember the first time I met him because we were so young. So I don't remember like a first introduction,
Right.
Kind of know how you and I met, which, we probably, can't talk about on the air, and other people.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
There's things we can't talk about for sure tonight.
a lot of funny stories about meetings, but we were so young that like I can't even put my finger on exactly when, because we were literally 4 or 5 years old.
No, were you guys like, early on there, you guys are playing racquetball, you're 4 or 5, you're getting better at racquetball quickly, you're into the sport, you guys competing hard in practice? Like, is it good friendship? Like, can't wait to see each other all the time, hardly ever fight? Or were you guys competing and getting after each other a little bit and, squabbing a little bit?
Well, it was always like, can't wait to see you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But anytime we competed, forget about racquetball. I mean, anytime we competed in anything, we wanted to kill each other, but then after we were done competing, we were, doing other stuff together that was, more camaraderie based, whether, kids drawing, digging holes in the dirt and making a mess and chopping down trees and all that stuff. But when we competed, we competed hard from a very young age. I mean, I remember us getting into arguments when we had to be, I don't know, 7, 8 years old on the court, because he would try to hit me, with the ball because he didn't have the balls to fight me. So that's I remember a bunch of times where he's passive aggressive, oops, sorry. But, I remember a whole bunch of times when we'd have arguments on a assortment of courts, not just racquetball courts, basketball courts, and, everything. So we played everything together growing up. And, that's why I didn't let him go to high school when I used to drive him to high school. I had to get him back for, being a jerk on the court. So
yeah,
you would by his high school.
And you'd pick him up and not let him actually get back to the next class. And
that literally happened.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, Eric and I remember hearing about that as you guys are in high school and we're all getting closer and closer and starting to spend time rooming together at events and stuff. And then you took it to another level because I came into Staten Island to stay and I was staying at Sudsy's house and you literally stole my plane ticket for a couple of weeks. And I couldn't get, this is before online stuff. And so I had a paper ticket that I no longer had possession of. And it was the same situation. I had to fight you if I really wanted to leave Staten Island. And I didn't want to do that. So
these things happen, but that is a true story. Like, and what was funny about it is I promised him every time, like, no, I'll take you today. And I drive and I would slow down. You could ask him. I would slow down and be like, yeah, no, you and I go to school.
So Suds, I mean, why didn't you have your own license to drive yourself to school so you didn't have to deal with that situation?
I did. It was just more fun to not go to school. So I knew that if Jason picked me up, it was going to be an adventurous day. And, our schools we actually went, he, believe it or not, the angel he went to a Catholic private school, which was just down the block right. Yeah. So my public school was not too far away, but I just knew that, hey, you know what? Anything could happen. If Jay just picks me up this morning, and it was an adventure either way, whether he dropped me off at school or not, it was like, you never know. So he kept it fresh.
Yeah, and in the adventure of driving with Jay is also high up on the getting your blood flowing mode right there. Because Jason, I mean, you're a phenomenal driver, but you certainly pushed the limits at times when you were young.
It's funny. I just was talking to a client of mine, her husband today, about the story of me driving in Riverside.
Great. Well, we can't tell that story fully.
As Scott said before the show, we got to keep it. Make sure the audience stays involved.
It's a family show.
Yeah. So,
My turn?
Yeah, Mueller, your turn, because it came a little later, obviously, with junior racquetball, and your first memory of meeting Suds, and where were we? What was going on?
So I had my first memory of all three of you, actually. So,
Okay.
it's like you said, so I started playing racquetball when I was 6, but I didn't start playing the junior scene until I was 13. And my first junior nationals was in Palatine, Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
the Charlie Club, right? That was what it was called.
Charlie Club.
And I remember seeing you play, Elly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember seeing Sudsy at the front desk trying to get something from the front desk, and he was arguing and arguing. And finally, the guy at the front desk, he was trying to get a towel or something, and he said, "Thanks, asshole. Love you like a brother." And that was my first memory of Sudsy Monchik, Rat Tail, the whole thing. And then later that tournament, Jason and Sudsy and I don't know who else, probably Russ, were playing poker. And I remember Jason had this like tank top on, and he was this like skinny kid with this giant bicep, like on his. But the first time actually that I actually hung out with you guys was at the Olympic Training Center in Marquette, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably 1986 or something like that. And we all hung out, and like Mike Yellen was there, and like all the you had who else? Fran was
Dan
there.
Obrimsky.
Yeah, that's right. Obremski was there. Heiser, of course. And I remember, I thought it was just the coolest thing to hang out with you three guys. And I asked Elly if he wanted to play national doubles with me, and I thought he was going to say no. He was like, okay, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. So, but yeah, that was actually the first time that I hung out with you guys, which was really cool.
When did you realize you were not the smartest person in the group?
Well, that was probably when I met, like Elkova Eisenogel. She was probably smarter, but
You know what, Elly? So a lot of you that don't know, Eric actually, as far as I know, is the only professional and U.S. team player to ever graduate Harvard, and oh, by the way, BU. So Eric is a Harvard graduate and Boston University. So that was Jason's sarcasm about not the smartest guy. I could tell you this: he's certainly the smartest guy that's ever played racquetball. No offense to anybody that thinks they're smart. Eric's smarter.
Yeah, you'd probably get some old school 70s players that would come back at you with that, but Eric is so accomplished in the court and outside of the court that whenever we need solid advice, I know the three of us generally will talk to Eric Mueller. And that says a lot about Eric. But Suds, your recollection of meeting these two, from your perspective, certainly, Jason, I've talked to you about this before, but it's always fun. It's fun for people to hear about your two relationship. But your first moments of feelings for Jason as they're growing, and then Eric as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jason in my life is the most constant, like I said at the beginning of the show, of any human being in my life, and that actually goes with my brother and sisters and any family member. He's the most constant as far as being there for me. Even to this day, my wife knows that, like, if there's ever something you need or someone you need and I'm just unavailable, and she knows this, and it goes without being said, I'm like, you contact Jason. And she knows that. And that's super important because, we all have friends, right, or acquaintances, but then there's a brotherhood, and that this isn't, Eric, it's not so much a family show because I'll say it's bullshit. It is bullshit. And like, they say blood is thicker than water, and Jason is what has showed me in life that blood isn't always thicker than water. And no offense to anybody out there, but he is a brother, and it's not somebody from my lineage or my family. And our relationship is something that I can't say enough about, and it gets me emotional. But I could tell you that he's made me a better human being, certainly on the court and definitely off the court. And without him, I'm not the guy that everybody in racquetball knows. There's no doubt about it. And this goes back to like you said, when we were 5 or 6 years old, Elly, we were constantly competing. Veronica and I talk about it all the time because she's a big supporter too of making the kids compete, and it's okay to make your kids compete. It's okay to make them want to be better. And we did that, but our parents and our fathers did that to us as well. And it just made us closer. And, without him, there's no doubt that I'm not the racquetball player that everybody knows or wants to talk about, but as a person and a human off the court, also, he's made me a better person too.
When you guys had game days against each other as juniors, whether it's in local tournaments in New York or at the junior nationals, every other year you guys would be in the same division. So, what was that like? Were you guys talking to each other? Because you're rooming with each other, right? You're staying together or right next to each other, in the hotels. Are you guys talking to each other leading into that match, or are you saving it for after the match? Was it tough?
Are you talking about pro, or are you talking?
I'm talking about juniors for starters, but then as it developed into professional, how that changed, because obviously as pros, you guys still room together quite a bit, but maybe not all the time. I mean, there was a portion near the end where you're probably rooming with Adam Karp a little bit more, Jason, and Sudsy was with Doyle at times. And, but you're right next to it. I mean, you're around each other constantly at the pro stops, but as juniors, how did that develop? How did game day look for you two?
I don't think it looked like anything, because we weren't, back then, first of all, we played each other, very few times in juniors.
Right.
He was that 1 year older than me,
right.
In the juniors, so we only got a chance to play each other every other year. So there's that. And there was times I lost before getting.
Whoa. I'm not a year older. I'm 3 months older.
No, a year in.
You were always a year ahead in juniors.
A year ahead.
I know, but I want people to understand that I'm not 1 year older. I'm 3 months older. But in junior racquetball, our ages put us in a year difference.
Jason had a great junior racquetball birthday.
So like I was saying, Sudsy was 1 year older than me.
Exactly, he was.
And maybe 2 years at this point. But Sudsy was 1 year older than me in age, obviously. So we only got a chance to play every other year, right? That was the point. I know Sudsy, with his little brain, got focused on the year. But the point of the conversation was we only had a chance to play. If we started at 8 and under to 18 and under, we only got a chance to play 5 times, right? So some of the times he would lose before getting to me. Some of the times I would lose before getting to him. So it was just kind of the nature of it. So only played a couple of times in juniors, and so there was no game day stuff. When it came to pro, that's different, because in pro, your mindset's different. So you just isolate your brain, right? But as juniors, it didn't happen. But one of the most memorable junior experiences that I had, that was related to Sudsy, was not me playing Sudsy. It was when Javad Agaloo beat him, because I wanted to play Sudsy so bad in the finals, and Javad beat him. And the beating that I gave Javad in that finals was only because I was so mad at Javad for beating Sudsy.
Right. And that's totally genuine as well. So, I know that you guys, wanted that year to play each other in the finals, or maybe 2 years in a row, like you ended up playing the next year, of 2 years of playing each other in the finals, 18s back then, when it was rare for players to play up. Sudsy, you played up as a 16-year-old, and it wasn't a great tournament for you. It was probably a learning experience, but those 2 years would have been great, but, didn't quite go like that. But you had that final match. So Suds, talk a little bit about that, your final 18 and under junior nationals match, because it's against your best friend, Jason Mannino. You nervous going into that match? Where were you? What city? And talk a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, it was 1993 in Baltimore, Maryland, and I couldn't imagine playing anybody else in that match. It was the match that gave me every single junior national age division title, singles and doubles, blah blah blah. And yeah, I was nervous as you can imagine. I was more anxious. I remember my mom was there, so my mother, historically speaking, came to the first junior nationals I ever won, when I won the 8 and under, and the last one, and never in between, which is pretty crazy. Because Russ was with us the whole time. Russ would take us everywhere. And I remember she said she watched, 0-0, and then she walked away and never watched the end. But I remember, Jay, Jason and I went tiebreaker, and, just like anybody else, he's going to make me earn it. And, yeah, it was crazy, but I couldn't imagine being in that position against anybody else but Jason. And but with that said, I think that if he had match point, he probably would have dropped his racket, turned around, shook my hand, said, "I forfeit," because that's the loyalty as a friend that he has. Well, yeah, I know you're shaking your head, but but he
Yeah, I
has
understand.
that.
I understand. It's a
Yeah,
hard,
I mean, he might punch me in the face and say
maybe.
like, you should have played better, but he also would want me to win that, but it was a battle. Yeah, we went tiebreaker. I know Jay remembers. I think Jay, did you win the first game there? Do you remember that, or the second?
Yeah, that's where Heiser refed and cheated the whole match to let you win.
Look at that. Let's talk. I mean, let's be real. Eric, you can speak to this as well.
I can't believe we did not capture Sudsy's face when I said that.
Let's be real, because Eric, you can speak to this as well. Jim Heiser has definitely liked Sudsy over us three a lot more. I mean, quite a bit more. Maybe not you, maybe not so much over you, Eric, because he loved you too, I'm sure. But I have a nice relationship with them. But
Yeah, no, I always got on with Heiser, but a guy on this phone that did not get on that well with Heiser is with C. It was not you. You got on with him, and Sudsy got on with him well, and I got on with. Or maybe it was Jason. Maybe
What you're talking about?
Maybe it was Jason. I mean, he didn't like. Well, so actually, when you played Jabad, didn't he make you take you? You had like a bandana. You had like kind of a do rag going, and he made you take it off. So you went with that. You had to go with the hat, right?
Of course.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I'm also sure you remember all the times he complained about me when I was running the tour.
I do. Yeah.
well, we can get into that in a little bit potentially as well, or not. I wanted to move along to the next topic here, and Eric, and you guys are both going to speak to this, and we'll get on to some current racquetball stuff here going on, but reminiscing a little bit about Suds in the junior days. What stories do you remember outside of the court that had Suds written all over him, whether he actually did them or not? He always claims that he didn't do some of this stuff, but you have a couple? He's waving his finger, but they're PG. It's fine.
I mean, there's the sort of probably soap and hot tubs, various places.
Can you pause there? Eric, you pause there? Can you start with the things that Sudsy did that I got blamed for?
That you got blamed for? Yeah, well, that would be one of them. That would be one of them. But no, but I mean, actually, what the times that we should talk about was the 5-star racquetball camp in Puerto Rico. Those were some good times.
Yes,
those were some good times. So for the viewers that are unaware, the four of us and our buddy Alan Engel went down to Puerto Rico for like 2 weeks or 10 days or something, and then Elly and I went on to Dominican Republic, which I'll get back to that. But yeah, so we just showed up in Puerto Rico. We destroyed Mercedes Ortega. We destroyed her apartment, and it was
her car.
And her car.
No, but what it was kind of amazing, because they put together a camp of about 40 to 50 junior players who really hadn't played racquetball before and didn't speak a ton of English. So we were there all of a sudden trying to run a camp, and we were ready for it somewhat, but we were also 19 through 21 years old.
17.
Yeah, maybe you were 17. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it was 17 through 19. And there was, a casino just about half a block away. So we had some options there after the camp day was over.
Hey, but I want everybody to think about this. Like the people that are watching, like you love racquetball as much as we do. Okay. Imagine this. Look at the four of us on the screen right now. We were 17 and 18 years old. And Puerto Rico actually brought us down, paid our expenses, hired us to come do like a junior clinic. And that's how awesome racquetball was. It was kicking ass. But there were great promoters all around. And like Eric said, he said Mercedes, who nobody watching knows who that is,
right.
Unless she's actually watching. But like, think about that, and we were just a bunch of young racquetball players full of piss and vinegar, best of friends. But we were pretty known, and they liked the way we handled it, or our personalities, or whatever, or they just appreciated our love and passion for racquetball. And they said, we want you guys to bring this to Puerto Rico and share this with all these players. And we did that, and we had an amazing time. And obviously, we're 17, like Jason said, 18, 19. Jason and I are 2 years younger than Eric and Elly, but at the end of the day, we were there to promote racquetball. We were really there teaching racquetball. And of course, we had an amazing time.
Yeah, I was 17, you were 18. I think the fact of the matter is that the reason that camp happened is because Eric was a tremendous salesperson.
Yeah, I think so too. And like Eric said, him and I went on to Dominican after and did another 5 to 6 day camp, thanks to Claudine Garcia, who's,
That's
their
right.
greatest player who ever came out of Dominican, for sure, the most accomplished player to come from Dominican. And so that was quite an experience. But I'll be honest, when we took off from Puerto Rico to go to Dominican, we were exhausted from the week of hanging out with you guys and staying up all night gambling and having some fun and dealing with 50 juniors and trying to give them a good show. And really it was a 4-man show because Alan Engel was in the locker room the whole time, hung over every single day. So he was useless, totally useless. So it was really the 4 of us. And there were enough kids who were, a little mouthy and stuff. So Jason had a clear role of making sure that if somebody got out of line, that he would get him back in line. And so, And so, right. And so it was quite an experience and one that I'll always remember. I think, I even have a shirt from it there where we all signed, and a 5-star shirt, thanks to Courtesy Sports back in the day.
That's right.
So, let's talk about Sudsy's game a little bit. Eric, how many times did you get a chance to play Sudsy in singles, and where were you in those, if you can recall?
So we played a handful of times in singles. I definitely remember beating him a couple of times, which, is good memory for me. But I would say that by the time, maybe I was really focused on school, in some of the later matches, but no, I mean, like we played a number of times. I mean, when I was in college, like I came and played some tournaments in New York and New Jersey. But I mean, yeah, I would say that actually the time that he beat me, that for me, it clicked how good he was and how good he was going to be was at the World Juniors. And actually, so you and I had just won the national doubles that year. This was 91. And we, so I played Sudsy, I think in the semis, in the 18s. And I think you played Jay in the semis.
I got destroyed by Jason in the quarters. So Jason played somebody else in the semis.
It was like Fabian Balmori or somebody. I
think so. I think so. Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good memory.
How's your memory?
Yeah, not bad. So like Sudsy beat me in a tiebreaker, and I just, like that was the moment that I was like, okay, there's something different about him. And, we got to, when he just had a breakthrough on tour, like pretty early, like all 3 of you guys did. I mean, I just remember Sudsy like went from, he won the World Juniors, and then I think he did well. Maybe he did well at Houston or something. I can't remember. But then he went from that, and he like beat Egan and Andy Roberts, and he was like beating everybody. And you won tournament champions or something, and it was just like you just kind of level jumped. And watching you play some of these guys that we would watch and say like Andy Roberts. I mean, these guys were just amazing, and to watch you. Sudsy, actually all 3 of you guys, but to see, you guys just sort of, blow past some of the current top players at the time was pretty remarkable. And it happened pretty early. I mean, but that was it. And I mean, I think his backhand was just like a marvel. I mean, it was, and I actually remember that in juniors. I mean, I think it was probably juniors in Minnesota when I remember watching you play, and like your backhand had just level jumped. And it was, it was pretty amazing. And I mean, Jay, I know we're focused on Sudsy, but you got my brain working here. I mean, I remember when Jay came on tour, and I remember one of the first times he played Andy Roberts, and Andy beat him in 3, but it was 3 like hard games. And I think that was the last time Andy beat him, because after that, Jason just kind of owned him. I mean, it was like he would just get up, and Andy couldn't hit a ball that Jason couldn't get to, and then you, Elly. I mean, my God, I mean, Houston and all the things that you did, when we were 19, 20 years old was just amazing. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but yeah, I mean, I would say that when Sudsy was 18, 19, 20, you know, he just jumped to a different level.
Yeah, Eric, I don't know if you remember the conversation we had. We probably do. And it was very early on. It was after, obviously, the Tournament of Champions. It was like my first year on tour. But that Tournament of Champions win kind of is like the microcosm of this. You and I were talking, and, you know, you and I always talked about breaking people's games down, right? And we were talking about Sudsy. And the thing that we kept coming back to is there's not a weakness. You know, there's no weakness. There's not a thing you can do. There's not a thing somebody can do, because at the end of the day, and you and I agreed, he was a thug. That was the word.
Yeah, he was a thug. And it was just a problem. I mean, he was as fast as anybody, you know, maybe Cliff, but like, I mean, he was getting balls. Nobody had a backhand like that. He could, you know, just flat roll the ball. It was just different. And your game, Sudsy, was just so aggressive. And actually, Elly, going back to your question, I do remember playing Sudsy. You were number one. It was one of the years that you were dominant number one. And we played, and I think we were in upstate New York. And I mean, it wasn't going to be close. And I just, you know, like it was kind of like being on the court. It was almost like enjoyable watching you. It was like, oh wait, I'm in this match, you know, you know, seeing some of the shots that that you were hitting. And actually, this is a funny story. So, you know, one of you said, Elly was nice enough to say that you guys, you know, sometimes call me for advice, and that's kind of been that's been the case probably our whole lives together. And I remember Sudsy. It was around that time, so he had just kind of broken out. He won the Tournament of Champions. And every racket company was trying to get him, you know, to sign up. His contract was up. And I remember, I will not name names, but I remember having a conversation with the Echelon representative. And Sudsy had played 2 pro events, which were Tournament Champions, which he won. And he played one other event. And I think he was he like lost in the 16s to like Cliff or Mike Ray or somebody. And this guy, who will go unnamed, said, what's he really done? And he was like, yeah, you know, Lindsey Myers had a 16 in a final. Like, you know, I mean, Sudsy's good, but he's really nothing special, and you shouldn't really be getting a big contract. And then Head came in and, you know, swooped him up for a big number at the time. But anyway.
Yeah, and then some great marketing, some of the best marketing that we've seen in racquetball in a long time happened. I mean, right before then, we were, you know, Cliff had some pretty funny stuff come out with the transition racket, and we'll have motorcycle, you know, and Bert and the motorcycle, and we'll have Cliff on to talk about and have laughs about that. Andy Roberts with the Terminator look was kind of funny. I think he had tights on, like bike short tights on right there, and we were all questioning that look. And then Sudsy's marketing came out with Head, and it was new, it was fresh, it was city-like, and it was really cool. But going back to that win, you know, Sudsy breaks out. I think it was around a 16 or quarters that you lose to Braunfeld and Houston, Suds, and then you go to Portland. We've talked about it on the show. You know, you get talked into Portland, and you go there, and you have this amazing run, capturing your first pro stop, the Tournament of Champions, which back then was a very prestigious tournament. It was almost as important as winning the Pro Nationals, which was, you know, a tournament or two right before in Vegas. Jason, what did that, you know, when your friend does that, you know, he's a year older than you, only several months really in reality, but you're a year older in junior racquetball birthday, but we're coming out, you know, you're still a junior. What did that do for your perception of your career and the direction you were going to take? Because I know you were going to St. John's University as well and wrapped up in school.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good question. Also, just to rewind a second, if I remember correctly, Sudsy went from losing to Obremski to like immediately leaving there and going straight to Tournament Champions, right? So he wasn't planning on going there.
It was Braunfeld. It was Braunfeld, not Obremski. It was Michael Braunfeld.
But he got invited there while he was at Nationals. And my guess, knowing Sudsy, is that he took out his Nationals frustration on Tournament of Champions. So back to how I felt when Sudsy burst on tour. Sudsy will tell you how I felt. He would tell me, I can't wait for you to get out here. You're going to kill these guys. That's what he told me. And I'm like, of course I am. We were just, you know, a couple of arrogant New Yorkers. I'm like, of course I am. And he's trying to convince me immediately to start playing in tournaments. And that was just a month or so later that I got my car accident, or I was coming out. Right. I was going to come out with him. So that's how I felt. Like, you know, Sudsy and I were neck and neck. He was a notch up in talent-wise, you know, back then, but not a big notch. So like I knew if Sudsy could compete with them or win these tournaments, felt like I could. I actually felt like Sudsy would be like the person that would stop me. Once he started winning, I didn't think the other guys could over a long term, beat me. And it actually turned out to be true. I mean,
I remember the
I
first
hate
time
to-
Suds you beat. I remember the first time you beat Cliff. At least that first time I remember you beating Cliff, I think, was in Arizona, right?
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
They had the side-by-side glass courts. There was like the glass in the middle of those two courts.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about that match too in a second here, Eric, because I think that's an important match in the whole bigger picture. And Suds knows I was there. I actually had a pretty interesting view and perspective of that match, and I'll get back to that in a second. But Jason, that was really interesting, and I want to touch on this. You're gone for a second. I think you went to get a drink. I'm guessing maybe a refill on the cocktail there. But Suds, Jason touched on it for a sec. He's about to come out. We all feel that coming as we're getting closer and becoming friends who are now traveling, whether parents are there or not. We're starting to room together as older teenagers, young adults, and Jason gets in this car accident, which almost ended his life. Talk a little bit about what was going on for you when your friend gets in that type of car accident and you're embarking on your professional career as a racquetball player. Kind of reminisce for how tough that was for you.
Yeah, that was brutal. Actually, I remember it vividly, and I don't like to remember it because he had this blue Mustang, and the road where Jason got in this car accident, which literally almost killed him and a couple of our friends. You know, had I not been home at the time, and I actually saw somebody that was in the car sign on, and he's watching now, Kurt, and if I was home, I probably would have been in that front seat of the car, and who knows what would have happened or could have happened, or maybe I would have told them to, slow down or relax. Or I know, there was an oil spot. I know the exact curve. I know exactly where it was. I mean, we grew up there our whole lives. But yeah, it was brutal. It was, I lost, one of my best friends, Mike Spike Seckel, who we all know very well, and it was a car accident, but not a car accident. And he had an aneurysm. That's a whole nother story. But when Jason got in that accident, I never thought for 1 second that it would keep him down. I just knew it was going to make him stronger. It was going to make him better. And, it did. I remember to this day that the doctor told him, you might never walk again. And without saying F you to the doctor, which he pretty much did say, he was going to walk again. So I was never worried. When I got the word that he was in the car accident, just because I know Jay, um, my first question was, is he alive? And that's the truth. And yeah, the answer was he was. So, naive thinking, I was like, okay, he'll be fine. And that's just because of the respect and admiration I have for him, knowing that he's going to be okay because he's alive. So he'll figure this out and get through it. But, a lot of people don't know that it took time to just to walk again, and, when he went through that, I feel that, we all go through things in life, adversities, whether it's things that we go through ourselves or people that we truly care about and love. And I think it makes us stronger and better people, and that, yeah, that was tough for me, but forget me, like Jason was the one that had to figure out how to walk again.
Well, you were there the first step I took.
Yeah, I
I don't
remember.
know if you remember that.
I do.
He was in a bad mood. I remember that. Elly and I were both in New York.
Yeah.
And we came to see you. You were in a bad mood. You were up and walking, but I actually, it's funny. I remember, I don't think you were able to play for, it was a couple of years, I think, or 18 months or something.
Yes, I didn't walk for 4 months. I
Right.
didn't walk for 4 months. I didn't run for about a year. And the first time I played was like a couple of weeks before I played in a tournament that Elly invited me out to. So I didn't play for just about 18 months.
I was coaching the junior team, the U.S. junior team, and you played the Worlds. And Shane Wood was killing everybody, and you came in, I guess technically unseated, and kind of mopped the floor with everybody. But that had to be one of your first tournaments back.
That was my first real tournament back. The
First
first
real
tournament I played right before that was when Elly invited me to Stockton. And I'm like,
Okay.
I'm not ready to play, bro. I'm not. And he's like, shut up. Like, come out here. We'll hang out. And I lost to Bromfeld like 15-13, 15-12 or something.
Yep.
And Elly's like, you got to play. Elly's actually probably the reason I played in Worlds. He's like, you got to play Worlds, you'll kill everybody. And, you know, the story you forgot to tell about Shane Wood was the story of his teddy bear.
Yeah, I don't know that story.
You don't remember that?
I mean, I remember something about a teddy bear in Shane Wood, but I
He
don't
always
know.
had his teddy bear with him. He had it in his bag. And while I was warming up, I put the teddy bear in the front of the court and started
That's
hitting
right.
it
Yeah.
with
I
a
do
racquetball.
I do remember
And
that.
so,
Yeah.
and, you know, the whole U.S. team was watching and all that stuff. So I had to straighten them out. And Shane actually beat me the first game. He served me off the court.
Yeah.
And they were all screaming and yelling. And I walked off the court. And I told him, I go, you can't do that for 2 more games. I said, you're done. And then I killed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just talk about, it's funny, Jay, because you just said that Elly is probably the reason you played the Worlds. So a lot of people don't know this, that, and Eric, I don't know if you and Jay know this, but so when I lost in the U.S. amateurs in Houston, in the quarterfinals to Michael Braunfeld, Elly was, if you guys remember, kind of like a little bit ahead of us playing professionally,
Yeah.
and he was already in Portland, and I had just lost to Braunfeld in the amateurs, got my ass kicked, and I'm on the phone, and Elly's like, "Oh, you got to come to Portland. If you're going to come to Portland, you know that's Tournament of Champions. At the time, it was called the Pro Nationals." He goes, "If you want to be a professional racquetball player," I remember this like it was yesterday. He's like, "If you're going to be a pro racquetball player, you got to come." He didn't care about me being a pro. He really didn't. He just wanted to hang out and have a good time. Like he really did. Like he was, Elly, I think you remember this. He just wanted us, because we're boys. Look at the 4 of us right now. Like he just wanted me to come to Portland. And I'm like, Elly, I don't, you know, all right, fine, I'll go. So he convinces me to go to Portland to play in the Pro Nationals Tournament of Champions, you know, really just to hang out with him. And I arrive on a red eye into Portland, and I have Mike Ray at the time, who I think is ranked number 6 in the world. Yeah, because I was 11. So he was 6. And I have to play him at like 10 a.m. I flew into Portland at like 5 a.m. And yeah, the rest is history. But Jay, to your point, and God's honest truth, I only went to Portland because Elly was relentless, and he just wanted to hang out and, you know, whatever we were going to do in Portland. But he convinced me to get there, and rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, I did to both you, and that was, we had a good time. I actually left early because I lost in the 16s or quarterfinals. So
Sudsy, come to Portland. I'm out of here.
You're in the finals. Hey man, great job. I'm out of here. That's a season wrap. But honestly, I was amazed that you won the tournament, because Drew at the time was no joke. I mean, he was a tough opponent. So it was a tough final, but I think it was Andy in the semis.
I was just glad he beat Cliff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but that's how good Drew was at the time. He was just a grinder and
Drew was a nice.
He was an animal.
You're right. So, you know, and Drew Koshic's, for who we're talking about, for those that aren't aware of who we're saying when we say Drew, but yeah, I mean, you know, and so it was a remarkable win. We're gonna get back to that, but Jason's situation was unique because, you know, he comes to play and we're playing each other, practicing the first night he's in town, and he beats me the first game. And, you know, I'm not surprised by that because I lost to him at the Worlds a couple of years ago prior to that. So I knew how good he was, but he had just gotten over, I mean, he's just getting over this long recovery, and it was just shocking to lose the first game and say, you know, you're ready right now. Like there's, you know, you're not actually, you're just, it's just a mental thing of saying you're ready right now.
Well, I was also fat. You don't remember that, but I still had on all that weight that I gained from not walking.
Yeah.
Then, right. So it took me from that tournament to Junior Worlds to get in real shape, and I did it. I lost like 30 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and your strength came out then too. You know, you might have been a little chubby at that time, but your strength was incredible. So
Jay, do you think, we never actually spoke about this, so this is a question. Do you think that your accident had anything to do with your style of play, or do you think that, because like when I look back at your style of play, like our whole life before your accident, you know, I remember you kind of doing what you wanted to, but do you think your accident changed the way you played professionally as, to me, one of the greatest players of all time?
I'm not sure, because I don't, you know, as a kid, nobody really hit the ball that hard. You know, so even when I was 16, 17, like as hard as you didn't hit it a lot harder than me. So I think after the accident, I probably didn't hit the ball as hard, so because of my back. So maybe that played into it. But I think at the end of the day, even if I did hit the ball really hard, I probably would have picked people's games apart the same way, and I would have just applied the same
Yeah,
type of thing to them.
I have an opinion on this. I don't think so, because I actually remember, Jay, you and I having, as you were saying earlier, like we would always sort of pick apart everybody's game, and you had Sudsy, who was like just an athlete, and Elly was an athlete, and Elly hit the shit out of the ball, and pardon me, I'm sorry, family show, hit the snot out of the ball. And you were more of a counterpuncher, even when we were juniors, and we would talk about people's games, and I don't know, because I don't think you ultimately recovered, but when you just think about your game and your speed and court sense, I mean that like you would just go like supernatural on around the getting the balls. I mean, sort of like, I don't know, maybe Sudsy had more all out, just kind of flat speed, but like your ability to dive around the court, I mean, I don't think there's been anybody like you like that. So I don't know. I don't think it really ultimately impacted your game style.
It's interesting you say that because, USA Racquetball did a story on the fastest players ever and the best retrievers, and I didn't even show up.
Well, naturally. I mean, there's 5 or 6 better. Hey, by the way, speaking of, you were fat. So Elly, so I sent Scott some pictures that I dug out when you invited me. It might be fun to, kind of take a look back.
Let's do that right now, Eric. Let's do that right now. Nice job on doing that. Scotty Max ready in the background. So let's go ahead and run that.
All right. You got to slow down there a little bit. Okay. So a lot of these, I think not all of them, but a lot of these pictures were from the first junior national team tryouts. So actually all of us were on the first time they had a junior national team. We were, I think Elly and I were, going into the 18s or whatever. All right. So that's, that was the picture of the thing at the Olympic Training Center. Okay. So, all right, let's see if people can pick out, who's in that photo. Suds, you want to give it a shot? See if you can name.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the screen I have, I can't see the whole photo.
Yeah.
It's,
all right, so I'll help you out. So you got, okay, so on my right, I think everybody's right. That's Samir Hadid. And then that's me in kind of the black shirt. I think that's Eric Story.
On the ground?
Next to Elly, wearing the Hard Rock Cafe t-shirt. Then you got Alan Engel. And then you got Sudsy. And then down below, right next to me is Jay. And then I think Brett Bugan. And then the guy kneeling in front is Brett Parker, who actually had one of the best racquetball nicknames of all time, which was
Good shot.
Good shot. Good shot. And for the listeners, so the reason Brett was a really nice guy, I think he's from Missouri, and he was like the nicest guy on the court. And anytime his opponent would hit a shot, he would say, "Good shot, good shot." So he became good shot.
Good shot.
Just like me.
Yeah, you were exactly like that. You would say more like your way of delivering it was a little different. You would say, "You're gonna have to do that all night. It's the only way you can beat me. The only way you can beat me is roll it out. No other way."
That's what I meant. But I meant good shot.
Yeah, good shot though. But yeah, good shot.
We see a lot of players, like I see a lot of old school names in watching right now. If you guys have any questions, please, for Eric, Jay, myself, Elly, fire away, because it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm just Thomas Helfrich, Bucky Freeman, Carrie Nadelman, Jason Wagner, Craig Rappaport. I mean, there's
Craig Rappaport's in some of these pictures, actually.
What is that picture right there?
Okay, so I think that is Elly. I think you wanted to pick up with me.
That's me hugging my buddy in the dorm rooms at the Olympic Training Center.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know who took the photo, but I wanted to get me some Muller for a second, so I jumped him.
Maybe Tammy Blockbank.
That's me and Suds singing. I don't know what we were singing, but we were singing. It was good. We sounded really good, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, these photos.
This is when Jason was fat.
But look at the outfit, though. I like that
Yeah, it's a
matching
great
shorts and
outfit.
shirt right there.
Who put me in that fucking outfit? Sorry.
You honestly, Jay, though, but that was what was so classic about you for me at juniors. You would come in something different every year, whether it was an outfit like that or the do-rag look going for the first
Definitely
time.
different.
It was different. And then our conversations would be so wrong for such young guys because we didn't talk strategy about racquetball like you and Muller
you
did.
gotta know. You gotta know you're getting hit for that.
Time out. I want to know this, Eric. How do you have these pictures, and why don't we have them? You know,
I found them today. Like Elly invited me to this thing. I'm like digging around.
but we talk all the time. Can you please send me these so I can?
I will.
These?
I
These are
will.
spectacular.
Yeah. By the way, your skin in this picture.
Eric, you know what? Now that's a great. It's time to talk about that. Go ahead. We have amazing.
Well, let's get through the. We got a few more photos. There's Craig Rappaport. So I'm glad you're listening. That might be Andy Yambrek next to him. Who, by the way, I don't know if Andy Yambrek is listening, but I ran into him in Colorado this year pre-COVID. He's a cool dude. Memphis State guy. Yeah, so that's Craig Rappaport. If you're on, man, that's you right there in the red.
He is. I see him. Go ahead.
Excellent. Awesome. I love that. All right. Roll tape. Elly and me cuddling again. It's a theme.
Yeah,
I'm a little uncomfortable with you guys.
Yeah. I think that's a Richcraft pullover I have on.
When you're becoming doubles partners, you have to do things like this. And we were in the process of becoming true doubles partners for a good 4-year run right there until I got injured and then he dumped me for Ganem and then never to be again.
Yeah,
that's how that went for me.
You know, and that's interesting because Cliff and I never lost a match and we never hugged each other.
No, different times. So when you're at your pro peak, maybe it's not quite the same as when you're developing juniors.
I'm not sure that Cliff and I ever touched each other.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably a very interesting psychoanalysis we could do on that right there.
Yeah.
For the amount of times you guys had fun together.
The one time Cliff touched me was he elbowed me in the face when I got too close to him on the court. Okay, so now this is me and Elly. I look awesome here, and I still look this good. I'm still as
Eric is ripped right there.
It doesn't get any better than that. Look at Elly. Elly, he's got crazy abs going.
I remember those rooms. So everybody that doesn't know, this is the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And, you know, even though that racquetball, because, you know, we always get this question, everybody that is.
Oh, we just lost Suds.
And he's not even in Ecuador.
All right.
Yeah, he'll figure out how to get back in, but you know, he's going to talk about those rooms and you know, it wasn't like you were staying in a nice 4 to 5 star hotel when you're in one of those rooms right there. You know, you're staying in a room that thousands of people have stayed in. Yeah. You know, you're not sure about the sheets. There's no closet space whatsoever.
Yeah, really nice towels too.
Really small towels that barely fit around the waist, and you got to run down, you know, a couple doors to get to the restroom.
So here's a question for you guys. So for all the times we were at the Olympic Training Center, what was there's always other sports, right, that are there. Favorite other sport that was there at the same time we were? Well,
I know you're going to say judo.
Yes.
Yeah. So because you hooked up with a girl from the judo team, so that's good. So, you know, I know where you're leading down that one, but that's an interesting question because you would come into conversations with other people quite often from other sports and kind of on the same path that you might be on in terms of taking having that Olympic movement, taking a camp for spending some time in these crappy conditions, but in such a, historic, prestigious place. So yeah, for me, I kind of preferred the ice skating team. You know, it'd be always interesting to see the ice skaters. They were always beautiful.
Hey,
and great.
Can we move on to what's the next step?
Yeah, no, we were
exactly what was going on there.
We were setting it up to come back. You know, you brought up kind of a funny and interesting topic, Sudsy, and you almost seemed like you wanted to touch on it for a second because, you know, one of the things that Jason would remind me about at every junior national is that he's much better looking than you. And you know, he would just tell me, like, you know, I'm the good looking one out of this group here. And you know, Suds, you went through a lot when you were 17, 18 years old. And one of the things that I've always told you is, when you're dealing, for those out there that, that have to deal with acne and that kind of issue, you can go one of two directions. You can stay positive or you can sink into the hole. And you were somebody who had dealt with that at a high level, and you were right out in front and did not care about talking to people or what they thought about it. You were just working on it. So talk a little bit about your mentality during this stage, because you're 17, 18, traveling determined, starting to become a known commodity in this game.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, my face was a catastrophe. I mean, it was an absolute mess. I had acne that, I did. And for all of you or any of you that are watching, like if you have kids, teenage boys, girls, like tell them to reach out to me. Yeah, I had zits. I had like a brutal face of pimples, and but it didn't stop me. I was still self-confident and had, enough belief in myself that it wasn't about that. And you guys were there. I would look in the mirror and be like, wow, you're an ugly dude. Like I would look in the mirror and be like, I'm a mess, and it's okay. Like, I did learn that, about the oils and the skin, and you get acne and it's okay. But, you got to be who you are and believe in yourself. And I would tell you this, for parents that may have kids, do not give them Accutane. If you want to discuss that offline, Jason, Eric, and of course Elly know that I do believe there was an effect, a mental effect that it's not, that's not something to get into. It's actually pretty serious. But
so you did mention that when you looked in the mirror and you had some feelings. I remember one time you looked in the mirror. That is something that's ingrained in me and will be ingrained in me the rest of my life. You looked at yourself and you said, how do I get so many chicks?
Yeah, exactly. You said it. I was there. We were in Phoenix. We were in Phoenix. You said, and I did, and I was like emotional when you said it, because you used the word ugly, and I thought it was the wrong word. I'm so ugly, but I get so many chicks. How do I get so many chicks? Right. And I'm looking at it, no, bud, you're not ugly. Like, stop that. Don't say that about yourself. Cause it was, it wasn't something that we just talked to you about either. You were dealing with it, and we didn't want to, it was so serious that it was something that was on eggshells just a little bit, until you let us not have to worry about that by how you treated it and the personality you had. And it speaks volumes, because, Jason was and is so good looking that you had to deal with that too. You're traveling with him to the junior nationals, and you got this muggle going a little bit, and, you got Jason reminding you how good looking he is. So, I can just say that I will never forget that either, Jason. It's ingrained in my head when you said that. And from that moment
you know
on,
why? You want to know why it's ingrained in your head? Is because, one, none of us ever thought Sudsy was ugly.
Right.
Sudsy was definitely certainly self-depreciating. He was certainly on himself about his looks, but he definitely was never ugly. I think that
you guys hear this conversation right
shut
now?
up. With his skin condition and all, the thing that was the funniest about it is that he was dead serious.
Yeah.
He was dead serious. Probably really couldn't figure out how he could get so many chicks.
Yeah.
But he did. And the reason is, the reasons were, one is because he wasn't ugly, and two is because of his confidence. He has that, and still has
confidence. Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
he had
what makes him great.
He still has this orbit, right? This orbit that is unexplainable. This orbit that he makes you want to be around him. It's effortless. He's not trying to. That's why. So he could have been ugly and still been fine.
It's true. It's one of the superpowers. It's true.
It is a superpower, no doubt.
On that note, that kind of leads into my next question for you guys is like, what would be the one thing that you could take from Sudsy's game and put into your game over your career? Like, what would, and for a lot of people, it's, his backhand, but that's just the first answer that comes to mind, because there's a lot, and you're touching on it with his mentality there. So for both of you, Jason and Eric, what would have been the one element of Sudsy's game that you could have taken and put in your game?
Well, look, I mean, for me, I'm probably like, of the, the four of us on the phone right now, I mean, by far the worst player, and the most common, like kind of, maybe I overachieved, but, I kind of, I couldn't hit it as hard as any of you guys, and I couldn't move as fast. But, so it's hard to emulate that, right? You can't teach somebody athleticism. It just, people have it or they don't. But I do think that what was one of the, and Jason was talking about it, but just Sudsy's, confidence, and really all three of you had it, but he just was so confident. And I was talking about it before, but like when he started playing the tour and started taking on these guys, like I remember you playing Guidry one time in Vegas, and I remember I was standing there with Aaron Katz and we were watching you warm up, and Guidry looked nervous, and you were just ripping it and kind of flowing, and you just had this aggression that would emanate off the court. So your body language. So that's one thing that you can teach, right? Like you can emulate somebody's body language, and Sudsy's body language was, I want to kill you, and I'm gonna pummel the ball at you. I'm gonna get everything, and you really felt that. I mean, it was just this aggressive style of play, and you could feel it coming off of him.
Yeah. So obviously, my take is different because I felt all of that. So the thing that I think it's probably the thing that almost nobody talks about in his game. It's the most overlooked thing in his game. And it's the one thing that I would like to have stolen is his return or serve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody talks about it. You talk about
Yep.
forehand, backhand, serve. Nobody talks about return or serve. The reason is Sudsy's return or serve is the reason that he was so successful against Cliff. Cliff has the best serve in history.
Yeah.
All due respect to Kane. Kane has an excellent serve. There's no doubt about it. Elly will definitely agree with me that Cliff has the best serve in history because Elly was on the losing end of a lot of those battles like me where we get served off the court.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to figure out how to return his serve. And the way I figured it out was by watching Sudsy play Cliff. I changed my footwork. I changed where I stood on the court. I don't know if you guys remember, like everybody stood a little forward. Sudsy's ass was on the glass. He'd smack his racket on the glass, make sure he's far back. That was one of the things that made me, I'm like, I'm too far forward. Sudsy's footwork on a return to serve back then was different than everybody else. Everybody else was moving. They're all moving like a tennis player, right? Like in tennis, a guy's moving his feet when you serve. That's what everybody else was doing. Sudsy did not move. Got his ass on the glass, put his racket down, and would pause. And the moment that I started emulating it and got comfortable with it, that's when I started beating Cliff. So I will say that it's not the thing I would take from his game. It's the thing I did take from his game.
Interesting.
Well, that's a great point, and about his return to serve, and it reminds me of a story. So you guys all, of course, remember my roommate in college, Seth Shapiro, right? So there was one year in Vegas where he came out. He came out a couple of times, but he came out to Vegas one year, and I played Cliff in the 16s, and they had for those of you who don't know, Vegas had a front wall, right wall glass court, and Cliff was just devastating on that court because he would hit these angles right into that glass. You just couldn't see it. Sometimes he'd come to the corner. Sometimes he hit a jam. And so, I think I lost 2, 3, and 5, and it wasn't as close as the scores would indicate. And I came off and I was just whining about it to Seth, my buddy from college. I'm like, I just can't see his serve. It's not, And then when Sudsy played him in the finals, Sudsy just pummeled him. But every time Cliff served, Sudsy would, just crush the return, and Seth would be like, Sudsy seems to be able to see that. Sudsy doesn't seem to be having any trouble at all with that return to serve. And he said it to me like 20 times in a row. I'm like, you know what? I got to go.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I agree with that. His return to serve.
To make you feel better about it, both Elly and I both scored less than 5 points in a match against Cliff on that court.
Yeah, I played him for the first time I played Cliff was on that court. Totally unfair. I lost 0, 1, and 2, something like that. And I could not see a Z serve to save my life. And that was my welcome to the pros moment. It was about my third match on tour officially, I was officially on tour. And that was my welcome to the pros. Cause I think I just won Houston and then Cliff was ready, or I took second in Houston and Cliff was ready for me to send a message and he did, and that court certainly helped him do it just that much easier than he did.
I remember seeing him play Kane on that court.
you know, that was a great match, and
Yeah.
and one that's epic and a lot of people know about. You know, for me, for Suds, you know, was I would always watch and notice halfway through our pro careers that Sudsy really was watching matches closely for about 8 to 10 minutes at a time. It wasn't like he would sit there and take in the whole match and talk to the fans and maybe talk a little about the game going on and be a little entertaining. He would get quiet, get in a corner, and just stare at a match and dissect it. And if you went over there and stood next to him quietly, he might start talking to you about it a little bit. And so that's when I started to realize, like, fuck, he's just way smarter at racquetball than I realized, and I've even given him credit for all these years. And then the execution, the precision in moments where he didn't have to bring out big, hard pounding serves, but could actually lob Nick himself to a pro stop win by executing. And generally, though, that coincided with feeling the backhand, you know, at the highest level, where he felt like, I'm going to roll everything with my backhand, so you can't just go there. And so those two things for me, precision, but you know, the two things you guys say obviously come into play. And so all three of us are not just going to his backhand, which is what, you know, a normal player might say. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, I serve more to his forehand, but on that note, Elly, what I don't think people know, or nobody could know, is that I used to take notes on every match. You know, Sudsy knows, Eric knows. Like I kept a book, and I would take notes. I'd draw courts. I'd figure out where people were serving from, and so on. Sudsy knew this, so when Sudsy was going to play somebody, he would ask me about it.
Interesting.
You know, what'd you see? What did you see? Right? Suds?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's 100% true. It's funny that you say that because Cliff, to this day, if we had Cliff on, he says, and he openly says this, he says the biggest mistake he ever made was actually speaking to me, because I have this facade, the ADD kicks in. And Ellie, it's funny, you said, you touched on, I would watch for like 8 minutes and I'm out, but, I would pick Cliff's brain, but I would pick everybody's brain, and I would want to know what they're thinking, what they see, and I would gather that info, and I would use it to the best of my ability. And I got lucky sometimes, but I did try to exploit a lot of that. And,
Yeah, none of that was luck. But again, I don't think anybody knows that. Like when fans look at athletes, they don't know any of this stuff. They don't know the behind the scenes stuff. They see the raw talent, right? It's easy to see the raw talent in any sport, but they don't see the behind the scenes stuff, the stuff that the deep thinking about it. And racquetball's a complicated game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's easy to think about it deeply.
So Mueller, you were touched. You go ahead, Suds.
No. It's yeah, Jay. To your point, yeah, it's racquetball is complicated, but I know you've done the same. Is that we simplify it, and we look at all the different complications or obstacles or hurdles, and then we take them and we try to simplify them the best we can. And then whatever we have to work with physically and mentally, we put that to the best of our ability so that we can maximize our output. And one of the things, yeah, definitely to your point, that I think that isn't done enough is the mental strength and conditioning side, which is really looking at it, all the details. Every detail matters. Like, it's super easy, no matter what business you're in, whether you're, Eric, if you're in finance now, or Jay, you're in real estate or in racquetball or whatever you do, right? Like, all those details matter. Every little details matters. But what I want to know, and what I want you to know, is I want to know the stuff that you're not looking at. I want to look at the details that nobody's looking at. And Jay, I know you did this too, with all your notes. Like, yeah, it's easy to say, right? Like, we talk about this all the time. It's easy to say, oh, you don't hit a short serve, don't skip the ball. Like, there's so much more that goes into it. And when you can see that, and then you can exploit it, or you can make your strengths stronger and your weaknesses your strengths, now you're a problem for anyone, no matter who that may be. And for me, like you guys are talking about Cliff as probably, I agree, the greatest server of all time. For me, that was easy. And Eric, we joke about this all the time. Like, yeah, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but that's what makes it simple for me, is that I say, okay, Cliff's the best at serving. All right, so I just got to figure out how to return a serve. Like, to me, it's that simple. Okay, now let's go figure that out. And then, like, life gets easier. And that's kind of the way I approached it a lot. And
So tell all the people.
It's about preparation, right? Preparing for things. And that's one of the things that, like, Eric is done better than most of us, like he did with his cocktail. He had his bottle on his desk so he could refill it, you know, which makes him smarter than me, because now I got to get up and fill my empty drink.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. And I wish that Eric would have called me earlier and prepared me for filling my cocktail.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but the three of us agree that Eric is the smartest of all of us. So, you know, it's something to talk
No,
about.
no doubt. No doubt.
So, Sudsy, I think people will be interested in hearing, like, you know, what was it about refill happening right now as we look at the ceiling once again? The view gets me a little dizzy after a while, but what was it that you tapped into on Cliff's serve? He won't appreciate this, but at the age he's at now, I think he's fine with it, you know, putting it out there for the world. Like, what is it that, I think we know the answer here, but, you know, tell the people, what did you see and what did you do to counter his serve?
Yeah. So the thing that I noticed early on was that, you know, Cliff's serve was so devastating and it dictated the tempo and the control of the match, you know, and obviously one of the greatest of all time. And I felt that I needed to attack it sooner. The sooner I could attack his serve, and it didn't have to be perfect, right? So he would hit a serve, whether it was a drive serve or a lob. Well, he didn't really hit too many lobs, but my approach was
He
just
was a horrendous lob server.
yeah, he was not a good lob
He
server,
didn't-
and more mentally than anything. But Elly, I felt that, you know, I needed to attack his serve as soon as possible, and my return didn't have to be perfect, but it had to put pressure on him. The other thing was, you know, Cliff, as you guys know, he primarily went with drive serve down the line to the left, drive serve cross court, and a Z. I found out that the key to attacking or disrupting his service pattern was returning his drive Z. And the reason was because the drive Z, when he comes across his body as a lefty, okay, looks like a cross court to the right or a drive Z to the backhand. So if I could take away that, neutralize that, right, he's not going to hit that as often. So now he's only going to hit the two serves, one to the left or one to the right. And a lot of times, and people wouldn't even see this unless you really were there or can see these matches, you know, I wasn't doing too much with that drive Z to the backhand, but my mindset was attack it quick, because when we drive serve, a lot of people don't know this, we're actually out of position. And, you know, we're way up in front of the court. We take a big stride, and now we're moving up even further in the front of the court. We're out of position. So if there's
Do we lose sound here?
Hold on, we lost your sound, Suds.
You know,
Oh, you're
it's
back.
definitely preferable to hit a ball, you know, at 180 miles per hour cross court. But at the end of the day, it was attack early. I wanted to attack it as fast as I can. And to your point, Elly, I would put my ass up, you know, deep back against the back wall so that I can attack it forward this way. I never wanted to be going backwards to get it. I wanted to be going that way.
What was your primary return?
Cross
On any
court.
of his serve, cross court to his
Cross
backhand.
court. Yeah, my mindset was, as soon as I was in there, you know, when I was getting set, my mindset was, I'm just going to hit a cross court, and if I could hit it and attack it early, he's going to have to react to something that's on him faster than anybody else, because, you know, he was so good at it, so he wasn't used to somebody, you know, jumping on it and attacking it the way
That's right, to turn his body, right? I mean, as a lefty, it just takes a little bit more time, and you have a bigger margin for error anyway, hitting it cross court.
Correct. Yeah, exactly, Eric. Like, I don't have to hit it perfect. You know, I could hit a cross court, you know, 1 or 2 feet high, which, you know, a lot of people don't realize, but I also wanted to hit it with pace. You know, I wanted to hit it with pop to get it by him. But that was it was that simple. You know, if anybody ever came up to me and said, okay, what's your mental approach on his return to serve? I would say hit it cross court.
And what would he respond? What would he respond with?
Off of my cross court?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a lot of times there was a lot of pace on it, and I just think that it depended on where that shot was.
What was your ideal response from him? Like, what were you looking for? If you didn't win the rally with a rollout cross court and he's going to get the ball, what were you trying to set up for your next shot? A ceiling ball response from him, which is rare for Cliff?
No. I just wanted to obliterate and completely, you know, physically and mentally accost whatever his return was. And what I was hoping for was like he would stab at, his backhand at my return, because I would pound his backhand. It's no secret. Like I would try to pound his backhand. And then my mental thought was, whatever he does, I'm just going to attack it. And I'm going to try to obliterate the ball. And I wanted the ball, like I could visually and mentally see the ball exploding in the front wall, just to put constant pressure on him.
Pause there for 1 second. Was the cross court the primary shot because of Cliff's court position?
No, honestly, again, going back to simplifying it, it's the easiest shot to hit for anybody in racquetball. Across court, if I'm in a hotel, if I grab somebody and say, here's a racket and a ball, just go in the court and hit it, it's going to go cross court. So for me, I felt like the most pressure I could put on him was to go cross court. But his court position did play a role in it. And he talks about that, Jay. He says that, he felt the ball was coming back faster at him than he was ready to receive it. But as a lot of people know, Cliff had a big stride, right? He was known to sometimes football,
once or twice.
Yeah. So what would happen is he would push himself out of position, right? We talk about this. And Jay, one of the amazing things that you did, and people don't even realize these little details, you were always in great court position. They forget, they say, oh my God, Jason only lob serve, but they don't think about this part of it. If Elly or myself or Eric or Cliff or Kate, when you drive serve, you're striding forward, and now all of a sudden you're way in front of the court and the whole back court is open. So like at our level, it's easy to blast across court, or down the line, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So yeah, to your point, there's no doubt that I did see his court position as, his biggest weapon was also one of his weaknesses.
And that was kind of my point of bringing it up. It's not that Cliff had poor court position. He just hit the ball so hard, and he did have the long stride, which put him in front of the line most of the time, which inevitably had him forward. So the obvious answer is across court to his backhand.
But if you can execute it. If you can execute it, right?
It's got to be executed, E. But Jason, you had a lot of success against him too, and your game was that simple also. And that's not, you said, okay, I'm gonna go cross court here, and we talk about it. And like Eric, to your point, to execute it is all I want to do is hit it. I want it to bounce twice before the back wall. Right. So I say this all the time, in coaching and stuff. I say, if we roll it out, right, like all of us have the ability to roll the ball out. But I'm like, we missed it. None of us meant to roll it out. We're aiming, for 7, 8, 10 inches,
Sudsy.
Well, it depends.
I get the point though. I mean, the point is right, and it's actually a good tip. Like, you don't need to, just in terms of giving tips to some of the listeners, you don't have to go for the kill necessarily. I mean, if you're, sometimes you're gonna hit a kill shot if you're just hitting it to the right part of the court.
Of course.
Like, being Cliff's sparring partner for 8 years and being on the receiving end of that serve made it much easier to see almost everybody else's serve. It was good education.
On that note, we're kind of talking about Cliff a lot now, and which is normal for us because, for as great as Kane is right now for this era and our era, as well as we came to the end of our era. And Jason, you probably had to deal with Kane the most, having the longest, being in the pro game, kind of the longest out of us. Cliff is our guy for that. Cliff and Sudsy were the two that Jason had to overcome to be number one in the world, that I had to deal with all the time for being a top 3, 4 player in the world. And so, we're talking about a lot, let's just kind of go down the line, with all of you. Let's start with Jason and then Eric, or Eric and then Jason and then Suds. What Cliff kind of means to you in racquetball?
I mean, look, Cliff was a bit. Cliff was a big part of my life and a big part of my for me, because I lived in Boston for 8 years and kind of played Cliff twice a week at least for all of that time. And so, Cliff was, for me, I mean, my game elevated because I had the opportunity to play with somebody that great. I don't think I've ever met anybody more competitive than Cliff. I really don't. I mean, he was a guy that hated to lose. I mean, really hated to lose, like more than you can even imagine, but loved to win. And actually, when people talk about champions and champion athletes, a lot of it is, that they love to win and they're trying to win and they're not afraid, they're not afraid to win. Cliff was both. He hated to lose. Like it would just kill him, eat him up. But he loved winning. Oh my God. And like he was the standard. I mean, he took a couple of years off, as people know. He tried to play pro tennis. And when he came back, he was just a force and kind of better than before. I think those couple of years off trying to play pro tennis actually helped his racquetball game and helped his mental capacity. I remember his first pro stop back was probably Pittsburgh. And this was probably like 1992, 93. And I remember he played Ruben in the first round. And Ruben was really bummed out that he drew Cliff, in the first round. But I mean, the guy was the standard bearer. I mean, he did everything better than everybody. I mean, he was amazing. He was an amazing player.
Jason?
Well, I think the thing that Eric said, that is exactly what the road that I was going to go down is the standard. Maybe not even the standard, but he set the new standard. So everybody that came before him, as great as those players were, Yellen, Peck, Hogan, whoever, Harnett, whatever you want to say, Cliff brought the game style to that next level. Harnett was really, really good, but he was a bootleg Cliff, with all due respect, to Harnett. He was a bootleg Cliff. When Cliff came onto the scene before tennis, guys like Hogan and Peck and Yellen, they didn't know what to do with him. What's really interesting about that is that's the exact same thing that happened when Sudsy came on the tour. Sudsy was a unique game style nobody ever saw. Most people were seeing the game style of the Mike Rays and the Jack Newmans and, the suave type of game style, not the thug type of game style. Hogan, a bit of a thug. Is Hogan the same level athlete as Cliff? I don't know. There's like a big gap in age there, but like Hogan didn't have the serve. Hogan didn't have the technology. The rackets were a little different, but Cliff brought a new game style to the sport. He was a revolutionary, I would say, and he brought the game style that we morphed into. And for that, like, obviously he's got a.
I mean, he also, by the way, he was a pro athlete. I mean, his whole life, he dedicated to his craft. I mean, his diet and his workout routine, his work ethic. I mean, the guy, he was an animal, and he worked harder than anybody, or as hard as anybody, for sure. And I mean, I don't. What's that?
Yeah, I think that's right. But Hogan did that too.
True.
Right? So
yeah, true.
Right. So
yeah.
Hogan was very similar to Cliff. He just came X number of years earlier. I just don't know the exact numbers, but Hogan was the Cliff of his time. Cliff was the Cliff of his time. Sudsy was the Cliff of his time, and Kane is the Cliff of his time.
Yeah. No, look, I will say, I mean, I don't know as many of the the kind of the up and coming players today. I think Kane is still number one and Rocky's number two. I think. I mean, that's kind of been what's Rocky's not. Okay, fine. But whatever. I know Kane's number one. But I mean, when I see clips on whatever Facebook or I see video or streaming, and Jay and I were still involved in the tour a few years ago. Cliff is better than almost everybody that I see. I mean, I don't know what you guys think of that. And Sudsy and Elly, you guys are definitely more, kind of in tune with, kind of today's players than I am. But I just, Cliff game game stands up, as far as I can tell.
Well, Cliff's game has lasted the test of time, period. Right. So, yeah, I don't want to focus on today's players because I think that will bog us down. To focus back on Cliff, there is not a Cliff or a Kane of today. Kane is the Cliff of today. So until somebody dethrones Kane in the way that Kane dethroned others, there is no next, guy until that happens. But that said, Kane, and I've had, many conversations with him over like really nice dinners and scotch and hanging out and cigars. He hates the fact that he did not compete with me, Sudsy, Cliff, Elly, Hogan in their primes. He's that guy. He's like us. He wanted to compete against the best. Like I wanted to compete against the best. All of us wanted to compete against the absolute best ever. So anybody that wants to like give Kane slack about whatever, they can't, because I promise you, Kane wanted to compete. He just never really had the opportunity. He was really young. But back to Cliff. Cliff revolutionized the way the pro game is played. He did.
For sure.
Just like Hogan did before him, but he did. And his serve, ridiculous. His power, ridiculous. His speed and quickness, ridiculous. Only matched by a couple of people in history.
And Suds, you're one of those guys to the point where looking up at the stats, and maybe these aren't totally correct here, but Todd Boss, as we know, does a great job of compiling as much information as he's been able to get his hands on over the years. But your record against Cliff, according to that, in Pro Stop Tier 1, Suds, is 31-23, 31 wins, 23 losses, which is amazing how many times you guys play. That's 54, I believe. No math major or anything, but, and you have the upper hand on Cliff. Now, different ages by a little bit, but, last thing on Cliff, and then we'll get off of him and get on with it. But, you're what he meant to your career, and you've said this a lot, Suds.
Yeah, I'm certainly not the player I people see without him too. Like Jason said, he set the standard. He was before me, and I think that many of the great players in the history of any sport definitely take something from the greats before them. And I was fortunate enough to play with him and against him. And to Jason's point, I do believe playing against and competing against all you guys that I was fortunate enough to play against the greatest players in the history of the sport, between Jason, Cliff, yourself, I think that's, 3 of the top 5 in the history of the game. And obviously Kane included. And, he definitely set the bar and set the standard. And I just always hoped I could, take it to a different level.
Let's talk a little bit about.
And hold on. So we're talking about Cliff a lot, and us a lot and whatever. How many other players do you think are responsible for you elevating your game? Because look, back then you play around the 32s match and you like run into a Tim Sweeney,
Right.
that's coming out of nowhere, or some other guy you haven't seen in a bit, right? You're around the 16s back then. Was a Tony Gelso, like a real guy, a guy that's a challenge. So like all those guys, the Guidrys, the Derek Robinsons, there's so many of them that like I can't even list. So yes, of course we all learned from, the top guys. Like I learned a lot from, believe it or not, Andy Roberts, because the guy he had a scalpel, right? He was a doctor with a scalpel. Like he
could anybody flatten the ball like that guy? That guy flattened the ball. That guy flattened the ball. Like
he flattened more balls than anybody ever saw, more than any of us, right? Because he had to. He was bigger. He was a little slower. He had heavier feet. Like that guy was a monster. I learned a ton from Mike Ray, guys that I have nothing in common with. Even Aaron Katz, guys that my game style had nothing in common with. Right. So, how many of those other guys did you learn from over the course of the years to make you?
Sure. Let's talk a little bit, Suds. I'm going to give you a little chance to just take some wild guesses. Don't think too hard about this, but I've already given you your record versus Cliff, 31-23. Do you know your record versus me? And you're not going to look any of this stuff up. 23-11. 23-11. I'm happy to have had 11 wins. Thank you. Okay, now you're going to guess your record versus Jason. Take a guess. See how close you are.
25-25.
24-8. And this is an IRT play, tier 1 play. 24-8. And this is going to get amazing. I'll just read the rest of them. Suds versus Andy Roberts. These are who you played the most in order. Okay, so who you played the most in order. Andy Roberts was 4th at 15-5.
So does Todd Boss have in there all the time Sudsy begged me to let him, beat me?
That should be an asterisk in there and noted.
I didn't have to beg him. He would just say, "Go ahead, you win."
You're gonna have to win. Big D comes next. Surprisingly, Big D comes in there at number 5 at the 5th most you played, 16-3. 16-3. Interesting. Wow. Suds versus Guidry is number 6 at 13-2. Mike Ray at 7 at 11-3.
Elly, when I hear this, it makes Kane's record sound that much more amazing because he's got like no losses against anybody.
Remember, you had about 8 full seasons only, correct?
I do remember, by the way, like 7. One time when you lost to Mike Ray, you called me and you're like, "I got to retire. I'm
Yeah. Meanwhile, Mike Ray was the guy giving Cliff the biggest problems early in our career. Yeah. So, we could say that about him at the time because he was a little slower paced in terms of the ball speed. He didn't change his grip and have the new age kind of mechanics, but he was one of the greatest dudes on tour. And he had this ability to frustrate Cliff and beat him every now and then. And we got to see that and learn from that for sure.
And former number 1 player.
And a former number 1 player.
So you can't take anything away from him. Former
Absolutely.
number 1.
So Mike Ray, you were 11-3. Tim Doyle, 12-2, which is amazing when you talk about Doyle in terms of a talent.
Yeah.
And how good he could play at times. To be 12-2 against him is amazing. Drew is interesting because that's a 9-4. So you have a couple more losses to him. Then we go back to that that idea of Drew is just such a linebacker on the court and so difficult to deal with just his presence.
Yeah, I think Drew's one of those players that if he was playing today would make everybody better.
Absolutely. He'd make everyone uncomfortable on the court too. Because they wouldn't understand the contact that they'd have to do.
You gotta figure you have to be ready to execute shots with somebody literally, elbowing you in the back. And I'm not saying that that's the right way to play, but think about it, right? If you could be comfortable being uncomfortable and you can execute while somebody's clotheslining you, well, it's easy to be set and ready to go.
So did you mean that most players would just run off the court?
They didn't want a piece of it.
Jay, that's a good point. And I've been fortunate enough right now in the last few years, as you guys know, to be able to compete with a lot of the players today. And I can tell you firsthand, none of them, I haven't met one, that is comfortable or likes my approach, which is that physical approach and that, really being tight and maybe they see this or maybe they don't. Maybe they say, I don't believe you, but I'm telling you, it's a fact. They don't like that physicality that we all have.
Drew Kashtik is the only player that ever made me bleed on a court. Made me bleed. It's a true story. And then after that match, he told me, "You're the toughest something I've ever played." Then of course, Eric, what did I say to him? You remember? You will never beat me again.
Yes. You said that to a number of people, so I wasn't sure where you were going.
I think my exact words were, "You're terrible, and you'll never beat me again."
You'll never beat me again.
Yeah, which was half true, but half not. He obviously wasn't terrible. But you had some similarities in the get-making ability because he was willing to sacrifice his body like you. But maybe not quite the same in terms of game planning and executing. But when Drew was on, and he was a former number 1 player in the world too. And
I have a ton of respect for him.
Somebody who should be in the professional portion of the Hall of Fame here within a short amount of time. Now, okay, guys, do you guys know the 3 guys that he has an even record with or a losing record against in terms of more than 2 matches? Who do you think they are?
So Mike Glow is not in there?
So Mike Glowa is on the 0-1 list, which is, I don't know if Glow is alive still or he's around still. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But
Lipperelli?
No, so
Lipperelli.
three players that he had more than 2 matches against.
Okay, I'm gonna say Kane.
Kane is one at 3 and 5.
Okay, I'm gonna say Huzak.
No, incorrect.
Ooh, sorry, Suds. Okay, I'm gonna go with
Simone Roy.
no. Wait, hold on. Okay, so sorry. So what's the criteria again? Is what?
They've had more than 2 matches on the IRT, and these guys all go together because of one thing. They currently all stand out together because of one reason.
With a Canadian.
Well, they're old too.
That's why I said Simone Roy, by the way.
Is it so he's had at least 2 matches and is there like he's got a losing record?
He's got
It's the other two
an even or
losing record.
Or losing record.
Okay. All right. So you got Kane. You've got I don't want to say Rocky. I'm not going to say Rocky.
Well, you should, because that's one of them at 5 and 5. Rocky
Beltran
at 4 and 5, and that last one being taken it from the even to the one they played at the U.S. Open a couple years ago to
Beltran and
Asterisk for sure. So with Jack, he's got a 5 and 3 record, which is impressive because Jack's catching you near the end of your career here, but that just shows that you had him early, and then he got you probably near the end there of your first ending moments on tour. And then I put also Mike Green in there because we all know Mike Green so well, and he's from our era in terms of age, and he's hilarious. 6 and 2 against Mike, 6 and 2. Now the ones that got away from you, and for some reason Augustine Tristan kind of stands out because I think he's 1-0 against Kane as well, or some shit like that. But
really?
You're 0-1 against Augustine.
I lost to him once too.
So there you have that too.
I just have a question. Like, so if I enter an event and don't show up and don't play, and it has me as 0-1, is that still considered a loss?
I mean, do we? I have a question for that question. Do we even remember or care to bring that part of it up? I mean, it's how in the record. I pulled it off the internet. It's in the record, but the internet never lies.
If it's on the internet, right? It must
never lies.
It's true.
Dan Shepik.
So we're not counting Arkansas. We're not counting that.
You know one against Dan Shepik?
0-1 against Dan Shepik.
Well, all I know is you just said like 10 people that I know I wasn't even there for like 7 or 8 matches.
All right, so
Arkansas, we played 4 tournaments in 5 days, right?
Yeah, that was very weird. That was a very weird week. I played all 4 of those damn tournaments because I never made it to the finals, I think. So it was a pain in my ass because I played all week for nothing.
You guys have your VCI patches going for that?
Hank got us on that one. So Augustine Tristan, did you play that match or was that a no-show match?
I did play that. That was in Long Island. I was about 225 pounds, and I was, I believe, paid to do an appearance. So I don't know. Can we?
Is what you're saying.
Can we define like
Augustine.
what's really play? I mean, if you want to play again today, I'm ready.
I think we got to call Hank. I'm not sure that the cell towers work in Oregon right now.
They're not. It's the whole Western North Pacific Northwest is down. Is down. Yeah. So for the viewers, like when we were on tour, Hank was running the tour, and there were times where you wouldn't be able to like reach Hank for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it was always like, oh yeah, look, the internet was down, like the whole internet was down, or like the phone system went down. AT&T went down, and so you couldn't reach him for a couple of weeks.
I miss Hank.
Dan Shepik, did you play that match?
I don't even know who that is. No offense.
Okay. Chris Odegaard, 0-1.
Ooh.
I'm 0-1 against Chris Odegaard myself too. Maybe 1-1. I might have played him, but I lost him as well.
I did play that match. I remember that. That was in Chicago, and I was cranky and angry to even be there because I didn't want to be there, and I just couldn't wait to get on a flight at the time on Thursday night to leave because again, it wasn't when I was a professional. It was more when I was an overweight, out of shape, just kind of hanging out guy.
One.
Jack Newman,
player, lefty.
Odegaard.
Odegaard, for those that are watching, I mean, Odegaard in the juniors was the best Canadian. He beat Kane in the juniors, by the way. They're about the same age, I believe.
Just
That's his
listening
claim to
to this,
fame?
I wouldn't even keep me in the top 10 of all time. So I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
So,
Top
I mean,
10 Canadians.
Odegaard
No,
is this.
I wouldn't. I would just throw me out of the top 10 of all time in the sport hearing this.
Odegaard is the second best player on this last little list here, because the next one is probably considered a little bit better pro career, a lot better pro career, and that's Jack Newman. 0-1 against Jack Newman.
There you go.
Pittsburgh. I was
Newman can
17
play.
to beat me.
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
he also had a couple wins. I think he might have beat Cliff in that tournament as well, if I remember
He
correctly.
did. That was the tournament I mentioned before. That's when Cliff came back, beat Ruben in the first round. Ruben was pretty bummed about the seeding, and Newman beat him in the quarters.
Yep.
And I think Mike Ray won. I mean, I think Mike Ray may have beaten Yellen in the finals.
Something like that
Newman
might
was
have went
good,
Check
down.
the record book. Where's
Newman
Todd
was
Boss? Newman? Yeah, Newman was good.
Newman was good. It's hard to win with that big waffle head racket.
Yeah.
Back in the day, for sure, that racket wasn't a good racket yet. Brett Hansen from Iowa. Brett Hansen is on that list.
No offense,
0-1.
don't know who he is.
Sean
There were like 6 Hansons. There were 6 brothers. They had a dairy farm.
They all have kids that play junior racquetball now.
I
They're
thought they
great.
sang that song Mbop, right? The
Yeah.
Hanson brothers Mbop.
They did Umbop on their Umbop on their Iowa
Mbop.
farm.
Mbop.
No, I know the family. They're a good family. Their kids play racquetball. They're into the sport still. Sean Graham, 0-1.
Mm.
Sean
I'm
Graham.
0-1 against Sean Graham.
That's what it
While-
says.
While he wore that watch.
I
Remember the
mean,
watch?
Jay, can you text Veronica and tell her to get on this call, because right now she's going. You lost against a lot of people.
Listen, I don't want her on this call. She'll leave you.
And the last one being, Jay brought it up already, Mike Loa. That's that
Forfeit.
one.
I
that
remember
one.
that. To my point, I
That
didn't
is not
even
a
show up.
forfeit.
So this is where the
not a
system
forfeit.
is. This is
Not
where
a
the
forfeit.
system
You
is
earned that
flawed.
loss.
I didn't even go. I wasn't even in the city, but I'm 0-1.
0-1.
That's,
0-1.
you know what, Eric? And yeah, the
The
truth
next,
is,
the
when
next,
something
the
important.
next drinks, we're gonna have all the people that have winning records against you. That's gonna be the.
When
That's
something important in life is going on, we do call Eric. Eric, I'm calling you in about 20 minutes because I need to know if I should really be as bothered as I am right now.
It's gonna be
about
okay.
all of these
You're gonna be okay. It's okay.
It's gonna need therapy.
Well, Mueller's got a
Just-
combined 0 for 5 against us 3 in pro matches. So
Yeah.
he's got that going for him.
Sudsy, just so you know,
Except the Long Island Open.
Sudsy,
That's
just so
my
you know,
one.
your loss to Mike Glower was the only time he made the 16s.
That's correct. I remember that, but again, to be fair, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I've got
No. Literally, I physically was not in that city.
I know. I was in that city. dummy.
it's an L. It's an L.
Oh,
But
you gotta get this back. Let's get us back on track here.
it's an L no matter what you look at. It's in the record books. But you probably that's
Can we
just
get
to
to
have
something
those.
important?
Let me
You
say
guys
something.
know how much I love the fact that the 4 of us are hanging out right now? This is amazing.
It is amazing.
But still, that's not a lot of players to go down to just out of the blue. It's a small list. They're Jason, I'm sure your list is really small. My list is a little bit bigger. I've got more. I lost to Lacera. I lost to Brian Simpson. I've got some others.
My list
on the
my
list.
list of what?
Of your list is probably really small, of round of 32 kind of out of nowhere losses. I don't
I
think
don't
you had a
remember
lot of
any
those. Yeah, I don't think you had many of those. It wasn't,
No, I deleted those from my memory.
yeah. I'd have to
They
look at,
happened.
I'd have to go down and look at that. But honestly, I don't think you had a lot of those. So, Sudsy, I think, the point is that there's very few of those that you had there, which speaks volumes to your career. And if you look at the top of who you played the most, your winning record against all those guys until you get into guys who are, a good 6 years younger than you, is outstanding. So, your career's for only 7 to 8 years on tour. It's quite an outstanding career. It's quite a mark. And if you were to times that by 2 or 3 and some of the lengthy careers that Cliff had and Kane's having, you would see some numbers there that would be, even more remarkable. So, kudos to you on that. We spent an hour and a half right now, even longer, talking about things from our past, and racquetball. We haven't even gotten anything current. And I think it's kind of a nice little change from what we've done on this show over the last several months with trying to come up with topics for racquetball during this COVID period. But, for you three guys kind of getting near the end here, is how would you like to see racquetball in the United States come out of this COVID period as things are starting to open up? Is there anything new that can happen to really try to up our numbers of new players, not just tournament players, but people who are going to buy rackets and keep this sport surviving here in the United States? Mueller, you're the smartest guy apparently in the room.
Crickets.
Jason probably disagree.
So look, I mean, this is a topic that we could take a whole, we could have a whole session on. I mean, look, I think that there are, we take a step back. Racquetball is a great game, right? I mean, it is fun to play. People love it. People get addicted. It's a great workout. It's easy to play as a beginner. It's easier to pick up, really easier than really any other racket sport, maybe other than pickleball, but it's easy to pick up. And look, I think that racquetball, part of the challenge is the infrastructure, right? Like we've got, kind of court accessibility, lack of courts, courts being taken out. That's one of our challenges. But, I think that there are a lot of lessons that we can take from squash, actually, where, squash was kind of really nowhere in this country 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And squash has done really a pretty amazing job of increasing participation, increasing visibility. And I don't think it's a better game. I think it's just they've done a good job. And I think there's a lot of lessons we could take from that, just in terms of the way that we organize ourselves and the way that we do outreach. And I think that, the tools that are available today in terms of social media and the ability to reach large audiences is much greater. And so, I don't have the formula because, we certainly gave it a try, but, I think that, I think the sport has the potential, to kind of get back on a growth trajectory. But look, I mean, I've been less active in the sport the last couple of years. I take shots at anybody that's currently, working on the game and trying to get increased participation. But I do know, having spent more than 40 years in the game, that it's a great game. It's a great sport. Just parts of all of our lives, and it has that potential.
Well, and I'll obviously, just add on to Eric's statement there. I agree with obviously everything he said, with the exception of that pickleball is easier to play than racquetball. I actually think that's wrong, and the reason is because racquetball's on 4 walls, and you don't have to chase the ball or whatever you would call the pickleball, the wiffle ball, off the court. But that said, we gave it a try to try to really advance it. And we ran into some stumbling blocks, which are totally fine. But that said, racquetball is a great sport. It's a great workout. And are there things that, can be done to resurrect it? Of course. Where does that start? It starts in the places that pickleball became what it is right now, where squash got to catch up to racquetball, which is, definitely wrong that squash ever had the ability to catch up to racquetball. With our imprint in the United States, with all the courts we have in the United States, squash literally had a directive that they were paying racquetball courts to convert to squash courts. So think about that. We've been under attack by squash for many years, just like tennis is under attack right now by pickleball. So that said, what do we need to do as racquetball, whatever? It's the same thing we've been talking about over and over again. Infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. Toss that aside. The biggest problem for racquetball is that there's no unity. Squash, a lot of unity. Unity, money. Unity, by the way, means money. Racquetball is very fragmented. Racquetball's following down the path, or has followed down the path of handball. which by the way is suicide. Right? So what racquetball needs to do, which Eric and I will agree to, what racquetball needs to do is invest in infrastructure, college scholarships for kids. You know, our base should be 150, 200,000 USA Racquetball members. You know, the manufacturers need to get back, you know, in the web together, rowing together. That hasn't happened in at least 10 years. The RMA is not in existence anymore. It was 10, 15 years ago. So to get back racquetball in the United States back to where it needs to be, all those, you know, components need to be rowing in the right direction. Right now, they're not. They're just fragmented. Internationally, that's different. Also fragmented, but different. But when we talk about the United States, where this sport was born, everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction, and they're not. That would be the one thing that I would say that racquetball needs to do, is unite the powers that be. That's it. Period. What does that mean?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation. But unite the powers that be.
Yeah, Jay, you know, it's funny, and all three of you know my favorite movie is Braveheart, and you know William Wallace, who is the legend in Scotland and the savior of the country. You know, there's a famous scene where he says, "Unite the clans," right? You know, I agree, Elly. I think that with what we're going through, I actually think this is opportunity. And I do think that we all need to come together. I think that it's important that all the associations, all the manufacturers, you know, all of us have a bitter taste in our mouth about the history of the sport, you know, what we've seen happen. I think that leadership is huge right now. I think that we would all benefit from strong, good leadership and a voice, and somebody that speaks to everybody. And I think that's vital to our sport, because I think to Jason's point, you know, this might be an opportunity to bring everyone and everything together. And, you know, I'm certainly not going to get into politics, and it's not unicorn and rainbows, but like we need strong leadership. We need to, you know, hopefully realize that we're struggling. You know, we have problems right now. And if nothing else, and Jason, you and I have spoke offline about this, and like, this is the time to bring everybody to the table, because if it's not now, when is it? And, you know, the four of us will stay friends and family for the rest of our lives, whether racquetball exists or not. But we all love racquetball, you know, and it's a common bond that brings us here tonight. And it's a common love and labor of love and passion, you know, that will always keep us together and always give us stories to tell our kids by the fireplaces or by holidays, or bring us together however, whenever. But if we don't figure this out together, and we don't realize, like, yeah, there's a lot of shit and a lot of problems that are going on right now in our sport, not just the world, you know, we got to take advantage of those. And we have to pick the brains of the people of the past, you know, of the present, of the future. But if we all have one agenda, which is racquetball, you know, we could get through this and we could survive it. And I know there's a lot of doubt out there. There is, you know, I myself am guilty of having doubt, you know, and Jason and Eric, you know, are two guys that I confide in, you know, and say, hey, what do you think? And they tell me the truth. And some of it I'm not going to tell you, because I don't want to discourage, you know, players and fans, and, you know, but there's also positive. And hopefully, you know, we can figure this out together, and hopefully we can unite the clan, so to speak. And I agree with that. I think there's opportunity. And I think that if we can work together and we have strong leadership, and this isn't political, you know, it's about somebody stepping up and saying, hey, things aren't right. You know, they're not perfect. Like, here's different ways to do this. And even if it's like demanding that we all come to the same table and try to figure this out, you know.
It also takes, you know, like Elly, I think about what, you know, like your efforts in Northern California, and I mean that's what it takes. I mean, you're on the ground and you're working with juniors, and you've got a great program going, and that's actually what it takes. I mean, it kind of, I was you know, thinking about in this conversation, you think about like a guy like Jim Winterton, right? Like another guy that's like on the ground, bringing people into the game, and you know, like you share your love of the game with, and you know, you've got one of the most robust programs out there, and it you know, that's what it takes. It takes, you know, it kind of takes the blocking and tackling, right, to just get people on the court. Actually, I applaud you for what you've done and what you've continued to do. I mean, you've kind of made this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and Suds and I talk about this topic quite a lot over the last 3 months with the show and everything. And it's not easy to be on the ground and to work with juniors who don't play racquetball, and you're introducing it to them, or juniors who now are into it and have maybe even gone to a couple of national events and now want something more out of it. It does take a lot of time, effort, and if it's not a ton of time, it just takes the dedication to want to give back to the sport, and that's not easy to do. I don't take that for granted. When I first started doing that, I wanted others from Stockton who have gone through the process to start giving back as well, and my dad certainly wants that as well. But people have focus on other things as well. It doesn't have to just be racquetball in their life. So I agree. It kind of brings into what you all are saying is, it takes a lot of people to come together who really love the sport and truly believe that it should be a sport that goes on for years and years. And that takes getting new people to play the sport here in the United States, whether they're kids, adults, aging adults, and obviously a sport like pickleball comes into play and starts to grab some aging adults when we don't get those share of them anymore. But, it takes personalities to ask people to the point of annoying people at times to try the sport of racquetball. And once they do, 9 times out of 10, they're going to fall in love with it because it is such a fun game, like we're saying. So, this is something that we work on here, but I know you guys are all thinking about it and working on it. And there's a lot of people around the country who still put in time for junior racquetball and just racquetball development in general. And there's no easy answers. I wasn't, looking for an easy answer for that one. It's obviously a process here, but the reality is if we don't get on it and save our courts, then we won't have as many courts as other countries have. And this sport was developed here in the United States. So it's crucial that we not only keep our courts that exist right now, but, hopefully add to it in future times.
Well, and with that, guys, we're going to come to an end, and Jason and Eric, I personally can't thank you enough for spending 2 hours with us tonight, because I do know how valuable your time is. And I do know that, I don't know what to say besides thank you. It's pretty cool. And I appreciate it. And, the only thing that would be better surprise is both of you come out to Vegas next week, and me, you, Elly, and Jay, we just get to hang out, and, whatever happens, happens. But that would be fun. And
I think I speak for Eric and I both that, we'll send you an invoice tomorrow for our time tonight. And then after you see that invoice, if you want us to come to Vegas, we're happy to come.
Just add it to the rest of the invoices for our many lives.
Add it to my tab.
Yeah.
Hey, Elly, thank you for the invite. The three of you guys are my brothers, and this is great fun for me, and it is great fun to be on a panel that doesn't have anything to do with the debt capital markets. So thank you for letting me wax on about something something other than my day job. And this has really been a lot of fun, and I would love to do it again anytime. And much love to the three of you guys. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I echo what Sudsy said. Thank you, guys. We've known each other for a long time, and that won't stop anytime soon. We all have love for each other, and this is a great conversation, and we'll talk again in the future. And Sudsy, happy birthday to you, buddy. 46 tomorrow, October 12th.
Happy birthday.
Born in 1974.
By the way, I'm 45 right now.
Yeah, Jason's way younger.
Just saying.
Hey,
45 brings in.
I don't care what you guys are. Just make sure you sign up for the $1,000 Vegas challenge. All right. Yep. And I know Scotty Mac has that. It's a good chance to win $1,000 and stay active. But the draws are coming out. We'll talk about that. So everybody, hey, thank you for joining us. Great night tonight on Beyond the Court. Elly, what is this? Our 14th or 15th show, which happened by accident. We'll talk about that another time. But Jay, Eric, we're not kicking you guys off. Scotty Mac said we're going to go to the outro so the four of us can stay in this room. To all of you out there watching, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be part of your Sunday night, and watch for the Vegas draws. Check out the Vegas Challenge, get involved, and you'll certainly see some more posts from us. Thank you again, and make sure you go play racquetball, okay? We don't care if it's indoor or outdoor. Scotty Mac, outro it is.
All right, everybody. So here's the deal. We got an awesome contest going on. Whether you're going to be in Vegas or not, whether you're competing or not, here's a chance to win $1,000. It's pretty simple. Here are the rules. First, download the app. Second, subscribe to the members only exclusive section. Third, pick the 5 winners of these divisions. Get all 5 right, you win $1,000. There will be a tiebreaker just in case. And of course, we wish you luck. This is a good chance for you to win $1,000.